Ready? So in this video, we are going to talk a little bit about the tongue, taste buds, and salivary glands. So let's begin with the tongue. So if you look at your tongue, you can see all these little bumps that are on the tongue, and we call these papillae. These are the projections that come off of your tongue. These help grip the food to make sure we can keep it in position as we're chewing. This way your food doesn't just flail all around your mouth while you're trying to eat. But also, it's going to have, as you can see in some of these pictures coming up, they also have taste buds within the grooves, which allow you to taste the food that you're eating. So they are important. We have three major kinds of papillae. First one, the circumvallate papillae. These are arranged in a V shape and respond primarily to bitter foods. Right, so these are more towards the back. Right. Again, this is going to help us to chew our food, keep our food in place as we're doing our chewing. The filiform papillae do not have taste buds, and they are all throughout the tongue as well. But again, they are important because it's going to give that roughness to the tongue that allows it again to grip the food, but also to make sure it can resist against abrasion, meaning that as you're eating, there's a lot of friction going on. So we want to make sure that our tongue doesn't just rip apart as we're eating food, because then it would get really tender and it would hurt to eat food, right? So we want to make sure our tongue is also tough. And with these papillae, they do have keratin, which toughens them up and keep them strong. This is also the white part of the tongue. And then we have the fungiform papillae, which is the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. And their main responsibility is to respond to sweet, salt, and sour foods. Right, so you can see these various papillae, and now that you know what they're responsible for, it can give you a little more of an appreciation for when you're eating your food, how you taste those different flavors. Here are a couple images of the different types of papillae so you can get a better understanding of what it looks like on the inside. Here's an example here on the right where you can see the various taste buds, how they hang out deep in the grooves of the papillae. Next up are those salivary glands. So, salivary glands are extremely important because they produce saliva. Saliva are going to be secretions, exocrine secretions, that help us to break down our food. Just as we discussed earlier, there are some enzymes that exist in our saliva, but it's also watery so that it allows for food to swallow much easier. It lubricates our food, and it's slightly acidic to help us break down food and kill off any kind of pathogens that are coming into our body. So, with that said, these are exocrine glands because they are being produced and pushed outwards of the body. Remember, endocrine glands go into the bloodstream or into the body. The acini are rounded sacs that contain the glands at the end of the ducts. So, you're going to see this term a little bit when it comes to our salivary glands. And lastly, here, we have three major types of cells associated with our salivary glands: the serous cells, which are going to produce that watery fluid, as well as the amylase, which is the enzyme that helps us break down sugar or carbohydrates. We also have mucosal cells, and these are going to help us to make sure that our saliva can be a little bit more viscous, as well as to produce mucus that lines the inside of the mouth. And the last one here are the myoepithelial cells. Again, myo for muscle and epithelial for epithelium. So these are going to help surround the acini that we talked about, and they're kind of like mini pumps. They are going to help us to squeeze out the saliva so that it can exit and into the mouth. Right, so remember, we want to make sure that we have our saliva in our mouth, and sometimes we need more at different times, such as when we're eating. So these are going to help pump that saliva into the mouth when we need it. Here's another image of what we just talked about. You can see these under a microscope. And lastly, here are the different glands, salivary glands that we have in our mouth, their locations, their ducts, and the type of secretion that they're going to excrete. So you can take a look at this and just get yourself familiar a little bit with the different types of salivary glands. At this time, if you have any questions, please let me know.